Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and I'd like to say I'm glad to be back. It's been about 3 months since I filmed a video, and it's been that long because I have been going through the grieving process of my brother dying. It's now mid-May, and my brother passed away in a tragic motorcycle in the middle of February. It was actually around Valentine's Day. And it's been a long process to try to grieve and recover and help his family get through this process. But I am ready to be back. It's taking me several times of trying to film this video. None of them were able to be successful, but hopefully I'm able to get through it this time. And what I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is gardening and grieving, and how gardening has helped me get through grieving. Now, I am no stranger to grieving, like many of you. In the last 6 years, I actually have lost my mother in a car accident, my brother in a motorcycle accident, all 3 of my dogs to old age, and a cat to an unknown circumstance. And I've also had many, many other really life-altering, difficult things that I've gone through. And through all of those, I have learned a lot. Now, my grieving and gardening process actually started back in 2005. Like everybody, I'd gone through difficult things in life that caused grieving process. But the first really big one was my divorce in 2005. Now, I moved here in 2007, and when I moved into this house, it was a completely blank slate. But I had a vision of what this garden was going to look like. I had a vision of how it was going to help me get through the inevitable hard years that were to come, with 3 children, being a single mom. And I want to share with you the different things that I've learned about grieving through gardening. Now, the first thing that I learned was about hope. Now, when I first moved onto this property, like I said, it was a completely blank slate, but I had hoped that I could create a beautiful space for me and my children to enjoy. And that hope has to happen every year as we go through winter. When everything dies, it's bleak, it's dark, it's cold, there's always hope for spring. When spring comes and the blooms start to fade, there's always hope for those summer blooms. And then once we hit that lull in midsummer where things aren't blooming as much, it's just really, really hot, there's always the hope for that spectacular autumn. Now, hope to me is vital, especially through the grieving process. If you feel like grieving is going to go on forever and it's never going to get any better, then life becomes difficult to live. But I have to tell you that hope has always been the key for me, and gardening has taught me about hope. Now, as I have gone through the gardening process throughout the years, that hope has changed into faith, because I have lived through gardening years where, my crops have failed, my favorite plant has died, where I've gone through long, hard winters where it seems like they're never going to end. But because I've gone through that process over and over again, I always know that spring is coming. I always know that the flowers are going to bloom again. In the hot, hot doldrums of summer, when the blooms fade and everything just feels like it's burning up, you know that the cool of autumn is coming. Then it's going to start the process again, but there's always that hope for spring. So we've gone through hope and faith when you know that things are going to get better because you've lived through it over and over. Next comes one of the hardest concepts for me to learn, and that is patience. And gardening has taught me so much patience. From the time you plant that tiny little seed to the time that you're able to harvest or see your first flower bloom, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of hard work, and you have to be patient. You have to have that hope that it's going to happen, and the faith, because you've done this over and over, that it's going to happen. Then you have to wait and wait and wait until it does happen. And that's the same with the grieving process. I've gone through enough grieving that I know that even though it feels really bleak and like nothing is going to get better, that if I'm patient, things are going to get better. And I can promise you that with patience, things will get better for you too. Now, things do not get better if you stagnate and sit around and just wait. In gardening, you're not going to get to that harvest if you just sit and stew and have patience and wait. You have to go through the hard work. Getting through grieving and waiting until you have that first harvest is a lot of hard work. You've got to improve the soil, you've got to mulch, you've got to tear out all of the dead and old. You have to be able to put in the new and beautiful, and then patiently wait for it to come about. And through that hard work, there's always pain. Now, I've come to learn that through gardening and through grief, pain is inevitable, pain is necessary, and actually pain and hard work, those are the things that are going to move you towards the greater joy. Now, the more pain and hard work you go through, the more you enjoy that harvest because you know what you've gone through to get there. And you always come out stronger, you've learned more at the end, and your joy ends up being greater. Now that's a hard concept for some people to hear because the goal in this life is to enjoy it and to have happiness and joy. But each life has its season, and those seasons are going to continuously revolve, but they will always end in joy. Joy is always around the corner, and that's what I've learned through gardening. Now, learning through this process on my own has been a long, hard thing. But one person that has helped me learn this even more is another person I've been grieving for this year. And he's actually a YouTube content creator, and it's going to kind of sound a little weird that I've been actually grieving over a YouTube content creator. But he's a person that I've watched every single morning for 7 years, and his name is Brian Barczyk. Now he's a reptile breeder, and he's in the reptile hobby, and that necessarily isn't my favorite thing about his videos. I enjoy reptiles. I'm not totally into them, but it's his personality and his willingness to show the process of going through grief, this process of going through hardships, this process of building dreams and the hard work that goes into it. He did that every single day for 7 years. And before that, before I even started watching him, he was doing that. I think he did that from 2023 until actually almost the day he died. Now, he died of pancreatic cancer in January. But when I first started watching him, he had just gone through downsizing a very large reptile breeding facility where he had built a name for himself, and he had downsized into a much smaller facility. And every day he talked about the pain and the hardship, but then also the joy of going through that process, and then the hopes and dreams he had for the future. And then he would work through those hopes and dreams and show you the hard work every day of building those dreams. One of his big dreams was building a reptile zoo. And he walked you through the process of the start of the dream to all the pain and the hardship that went through building that dream, and then the extreme joy of achieving it. So he got to that dream, but that wasn't the end. He wanted to expand. He walked us through the dreams and then the expansion and the hard work and the pain he went through to get that to happen, and then the extreme joy of when it actually happened. 2 weeks later, that facility was shut down by the COVID shutdowns. And then he fell into deep problems with anxiety and stress and just depression. And he showed us how he worked through that process. And it took him a long time to work his way out of that. But he built himself into a stronger person. His facilities were stronger for it. Everything was better for the pain that he went through in that process. And then about a year, maybe even 2 before he died, he wanted to move on to the next step. He wanted to build an aquarium. And he showed the process of the dream, and then the setbacks, and then the joys, and then the hard work and the pain that went into finally finding the facility that he wanted to build in. He bought the facility, started the teardown process. 2 months into it, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. 10 months later, he died from it. But during that 10 months, he went from almost losing that dream to now, probably by the end of the year, his family will have created that aquarium. And it's going to be named the Legacy Aquarium, which I think absolutely embodies his life. And he definitely left a legacy for me on learning and knowing how going through trials and hardships are going to make you stronger in the end. And that's also what gardening has taught me, is if you go through the hard work and the pain that it takes to build a beautiful place, there is always joy on the other side. There will always be more hardships that come up, but you will be stronger as you go through them. So if there are any of you out there who are dealing with grief, dealing with hardships, just dealing with life in general, I can promise you that if you utilize faith, hope, patience, go through the hard work and the pain that you need, and then take the time if you need to grieve, take the time that you need to rest, then on the other side, you're going to come out stronger and there will be joy. And I know that happens because I've seen it. So I really hope this video has been helpful to you. And if it has been helpful to you, I hope you like, subscribe, share this with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.